My name is Camille Ross, and I was 34 when my husband told me we could not afford $1,475 a month for our son's childcare. He said it while our 2-year-old, Milo, sat beside me eating sliced strawberries. The daycare director was still on speakerphone when Owen walked into the kitchen, heard the price, and said, "Tell her no. We already decided this. We are not paying strangers nearly $1,500 to raise Milo." We had not decided. Owen had repeated the same answer until he believed repetition counted as agreement. That night, while he slept, I downloaded 14 months of bank statements for our tax preparer. On the first business day of every month, I found the same electronic transfer. PAIGHOLLOWAY. Rent, $1,350. Paige was Owen's younger sister. 14 payments meant he had secretly sent her $18,900 from our joint account, while telling me childcare would destroy us financially. But the date on the first payment was what made me stop breathing for a moment. Owen had started paying Paige's rent 2 weeks before I reduced my work schedule. He already knew where our childcare money was going when he convinced me there was no money to spend. Before I tell you what I did with those statements, welcome back to Hush and Tell Stories. If someone had decided that your future was the most affordable thing to sacrifice, would you try to repair the marriage, or would the lie itself be enough to end it? Tell me in the comments, and subscribe if stories about quiet truth and hard boundaries speak to you. Before Milo was born, I worked full-time as a diagnostic medical sonographer at Lakeside Imaging Center in Madison, Wisconsin. I had spent more than a decade learning how to find what people could not see from the outside. I knew the angle of a probe could change what appeared on a screen. I knew a tiny shadow could mean nothing or everything. I loved the precision of the work. I loved that frightened patients often entered my room holding their breath and left feeling that someone had truly paid attention. I was not a doctor, and I never pretended to be one, but I knew how to make a clinical room feel human. I also earned good money. Not quite as much as Owen, but close. My employer paid most of our health insurance premium, matched my retirement contributions, and offered paid leave. My manager, Marisol Bennett, had begun training me to handle scheduling conflicts and equipment audits because she planned to recommend me for the next lead sonographer opening. One afternoon, before I went on maternity leave, Marisol handed me a blue training binder. "Your name is next on my leadership plan," she said. "When you come back, we'll finish this." I kept that binder in the bottom drawer of my desk at home. For a long time, I could not open it. Owen worked as a regional sales representative for a commercial flooring company. He was good with people and excellent at making a decision sound inevitable. In restaurants, he ordered quickly. On vacations, he chose the route. If our insurance company made a mistake, he called and stayed on the line until it was fixed. When we first married, I had liked that confidence. I mistook certainty for dependability because, most of the time, his choices were sensible. He paid bills on time, kept the car serviced, and remembered to renew the homeowner's policy. I did not notice how often his competence placed him at the center of every decision. We had been married 7 years when Milo was born. We had wanted him deeply. During my pregnancy, we placed his name on 5 daycare waiting lists. Madison had good childcare centers, but the places near our jobs filled months in advance. Owen and I agreed that I would take my full maternity leave and return to work when a place opened. At least, I believed that was our agreement. The first center called when Milo was 11 weeks old. The monthly tuition was $1,475. I sat down with a yellow legal pad and calculated my take-home pay, the cost of care, the insurance savings through my employer, my retirement match, and the difference between full-time and weekend shift rates. Even after childcare, returning full-time left our household ahead. More importantly, I would keep building retirement credit, paid leave, seniority, and eligibility for promotion. Owen looked at one line. He circled $1,475 in red ink. "Why work just to hand your paycheck to strangers?" he asked. "It is not my expense," I said. "It is our childcare expense." "You know what I mean?" "I do know what you mean. You are subtracting the whole amount from my paycheck as if Milo only needs care because I work." He leaned back and folded his arms. "Milo needs his mother more than your imaging center needs another supervisor." The sentence sounded loving if you did not look too closely. That W. As Owen's particular skill. He could wrap control in concerns so neatly that objecting made me sound cold. He said we should wait until Milo turned 3. Preschool would be less expensive then, he argued. I could take 2 weekend shifts each week, keep my certification current, and avoid paying for care because he would be home with Milo. "It is temporary," he promised. "We are choosing the responsible option." I was exhausted, still recovering, and terrified of making the wrong choice for my baby. Every parenting article seemed designed to make mothers feel guilty from opposite directions. Work, and you were absent. Stay home, and you were wasting your potential. I wanted Owen to be my partner inside that uncertainty. Instead, he presented one answer as proof that I loved our son. I declined the place. The following Monday, I signed a reduced schedule form at work. Marisol stood beside the copy machine while the pages came out. "Are you sure?" she asked. "It's only until Milo turns 3. She glanced at the form, then at me. "Weekend coverage keeps you employed, Camille, but it takes you out of the room where decisions are made." I tried to smile. "I know." She opened my desk drawer, removed the blue leadership binder, and handed it to me. "Keep this. Temporary choices have a way of becoming permanent when nobody protects the return date." My new life was efficient and relentless. Monday through Friday, I handled breakfast, naps, laundry, groceries, pediatric appointments, meal planning, and every small emergency that arrived without asking whether I had slept. On Saturdays and Sundays, I left home before sunrise and scanned patients until evening. Owen stayed with Milo. We passed each other like employees changing shifts. He called his weekends dad duty. Nobody called my weekdays anything. At first, I tried to preserve pieces of my old professional life. I read imaging journals during naps and completed online continuing education after Milo went to bed. But exhaustion made every page take twice as long. When colleagues discussed new protocols in the break room, I often realized the decisions had been made at meetings I no longer attended. 6 months after I reduced my schedule, Lakeside posted the lead sonographer position. Marisol called me before the posting went live. "You can apply," she said, "but the position requires weekdays." I looked at Milo sleeping against my chest. "We still don't have childcare." There was a pause. Then "I'm sorry." The job went to a capable sonographer named Erin. I congratulated her sincerely, then cried in my car where no one could see me. At home, Owen told me there would be another opportunity. "You're choosing motherhood right now," he said. "That matters more than a title." I wanted to believe him, so I tried. Our financial arrangement changed gradually. My weekend income still entered our joint checking account, but Owen began speaking about money as if he were allowing me access to what he earned. If I bought Milo new shoes, no explanation was needed. If I replaced my worn work clogs, Owen asked whether they could wait until the next pay period. Once at a pharmacy, I added a $28 face cream to our basket. Owen picked it up, read the price, and said, "Do you really need this one?" I put it back. The next morning, a charge for $86 from a steakhouse appeared on our card. Owen had taken a client to dinner. His company would reimburse it eventually, so he saw no contradiction. The dependence embarrassed me because I still worked every weekend. I had not stopped contributing. I had simply arranged my entire paid life around the unpaid work that made Owen's schedule possible. His family praised the arrangement. At a summer cookout, Owen's mother, Linda, watched me cut grapes for Milo and said, "You are lucky Owen supports you staying home. So many men would insist their wives work." Before I could answer, Owen rested a hand on my shoulder. "Camille could have gone back," he said. "She didn't want Milo raised by a schedule." Everyone smiled at me as if I had been given an award. I remember looking down at the plastic knife in my hand. I had never said I did not want to return. I had said we could make it work. Owen had said we could not afford it, but correcting him in front of his parents felt ungrateful. So I gave a small smile and kept cutting grapes. That silence became part of the story he told about us. Paige was at that cookout with her 5-year-old daughter, Nora. Paige was 29 and newly divorced. Her former husband, Derek, had moved to Milwaukee after they separated. Child support payments came inconsistently, and Paige worked at a boutique fitness studio where her hours changed with class enrollment. I knew she was struggling. I also knew she lived in a modern 2-bedroom apartment with underground parking, a pool, and a fitness room. When she and Derek had rented it, 2 incomes made the price manageable. After he left, Paige kept saying she wanted stability for Nora. I sympathized with her. I had watched Nora curl against her mother during the worst months of the divorce. If Paige had asked us for emergency help, I would have discussed it seriously. I might even have agreed to a limited amount, but she never asked me. Owen occasionally mentioned buying groceries for Paige or paying one of Nora's activity fees. He presented those things as small favors. I never objected. In my family, helping someone during a crisis was normal. What was not normal was building that help out of another person's sacrifice and keeping the blueprint hidden. As Milo approached 2, I put his name on another daycare list near Lakeside. I did not tell Owen immediately because a place could take a year to open. I was not making a financial commitment. I was protecting an option. 11 months later, on a Thursday morning, the director called. Milo sat in his booster seat eating strawberries. I answered with one hand while wiping juice from the table with the other. "Mrs. Ross, this is Hannah from Bright Steps," the woman said. "A family is moving unexpectedly. We have a full-time place in the toddler room beginning in 2 weeks." For a second, I could not speak. "Are you still interested?" she asked. "Yes. I need to confirm the finances, but yes." She explained that tuition was $1,475 a month and the deposit was due by 5 o'clock Friday. I asked if I could place her on speakerphone so I could write down the details. That was when Owen walked in. He had returned from an overnight sales trip earlier than expected. He set his keys on the counter and listened while Hannah explained the start date. When the call ended, I turned toward him. "This is the center near Lakeside. If Marisol still has a full-time opening, I can go back." "How much?" $14.75. His answer came instantly. "Tell her no, we already decided this." Hannah was still on speakerphone. A small silence filled the kitchen. I reached for my phone and took her off speaker. "I'm sorry, can I call you back this afternoon?" "Of course," she said. "Just remember, I can only hold the place until 5 tomorrow." After we disconnected, I stared at Owen. "We never decided. You kept saying we couldn't afford it." "Because we can't. You don't even know what I would make full-time now. I know what daycare costs." I called Marisol from the laundry room. I felt ridiculous hiding beside a basket of towels to ask about my own career. She answered on the second ring. "Please tell me Bright Steps called." "How did you know?" "One of our billing coordinators is the family moving." She mentioned the opening. Marisol confirmed that a full-time sonographer position remained available. Another lead position would be posted internally the following month because Aaron was transferring to a new location. "I cannot promise the lead job," she said. "You would interview with everyone else, but I can promise you are qualified to apply." She emailed me the salary, health plan contribution, retirement match, and paid leave details. I printed them and recreated my old calculation on the yellow legal pad. That evening, I set everything in front of Owen. "After daycare and payroll deductions, we are still ahead," I said. "Your insurance premium also drops if Milo and I move back to my employer's plan." Owen barely glanced down. "Our mortgage went up. Groceries went up. Utilities went up. We do not have an extra $1,475 every month." "It is not extra, my income increases, and most of that increase disappears." "Not most, look at the actual numbers." He pushed the legal pad back toward me. "I don't need a spreadsheet to know we can't afford it. Call them tomorrow and release the spot." Then he stood, rinsed his plate, and asked whether Milo needed a bath. It was the ease of that transition that unsettled me. He had dismissed my job, my calculations, and a deadline that might not come again. Then he moved on as if the subject belonged to him because he had ended it. I bathed Milo while Owen answered emails. After bedtime, he watched television and fell asleep on the couch. I went to the kitchen to gather documents for our tax preparer. Owen usually handled our accounts. I had access, but I rarely downloaded statements because he paid the bills and summarized the balances. That arrangement had once felt efficient. I logged in and opened the most recent month. Near the top was an electronic transfer for $1,350. PAIGHOLLOWAY, rent. I assumed it was a one-time emergency. Paige's divorce had been messy. Maybe she had faced an eviction notice. Maybe Owen had panicked and planned to tell me later. Then I opened the previous month. The same transfer appeared on the first business day. I opened another statement, then another. 14 identical payments marched backward AC. Ross my screen. I created a spreadsheet and entered every date and amount. The total was $18,900. Owen had spent almost exactly what 14 months of Milo's childcare would have cost, except Paige's rent was only $125 less each month. My hands became cold, not shaky. Cold. I opened the oldest statement again and compared the date to the copy of my reduced schedule form. The first rent payment had left our account on March 1st. I had reduced my schedule on March 15th. 2 weeks. Owen had already promised Paige $1,350 a month when he circled the daycare price on my legal pad and told me we had no choice. I did not wake him. I did not call Paige. I knew enough to be hurt, but not enough to understand the structure of the lie. So I kept looking. I searched our messages for every conversation about money during those 14 months. A pattern emerged. In June, I had asked why the checking balance was nearly $1,500 lower than expected. Owen replied, "The insurance premium jumped again. We'll have to tighten up this month." Paige's rent had been paid 3 days earlier. In September, he told me our property tax adjustment had increased the mortgage payment. It had increased by $87. He used that true number to hide a much larger one. In November, I asked whether we could restart the spousal retirement contribution he had opened for me after Milo was born. "Not yet," he wrote. "We both have to sacrifice somewhere." He had stopped contributing $300 a month to my retirement 6 months earlier. Paige's $1,350 had never been late. I printed the messages. I printed the retirement statements. I highlighted dates and placed the pages beside the transfers. At 2 in the morning, I found one more detail. Owen had labeled several transfers as family support in the budgeting app he used on his phone, but the bank descriptions still carried Paige's name and the word rent. He had not forgotten to mention them. He had categorized them where he knew I would not look. I went upstairs and stood beside our bed. Owen slept on his stomach, one arm under the pillow. I had loved that familiar shape for 7 years. I knew the small scar near his shoulder and the way he searched for my hand in his sleep. That night, familiarity did not feel like safety. It felt like evidence of how long someone could live beside you while making decisions you never knew existed. The next morning, I made Milo oatmeal and waited until he was settled with a puzzle in the living room. Owen entered the kitchen wearing his blue sales shirt. "Did you email the daycare?" I placed the first statement on the table. "What is this?" He stopped. His eyes went directly to the transfer, not the amount. He knew exactly what I had found. "Paige needed help after the divorce," he said. "For 14 months, she has a child. So do we." He pulled out a chair but did not sit. "This is different." I laid the other statements down one at a time. Explain how. Paige was going through a divorce. Derek barely pays support. She needed stability for Nora. And I needed childcare to keep my job. You have a husband and a home. Paige didn't have anyone. She had you. Apparently she also had me. I just wasn't told. His jaw tightened. "Do not make this ugly. I helped my sister. You took $18,900 from our joint account. I earn most of what comes into this house now." For a moment, the kitchen seemed unnaturally quiet. Even Milo's puzzle pieces had stopped clicking in the next room. You earn more now, I said, because I reduced my hours to care for our son after you told me childcare was unaffordable. And I work all week to support this family. I work every weekend, Owen. Then I work here all week. That is not what I meant. It is exactly what you meant. He finally sat down. Paige would have lost the apartment. Nora would have had to change schools. I was not going to let that happen when I could prevent it. You could prevent it because I was providing free childcare and giving up my weekday income. You wanted to stay home? No, you said we had no financial alternative. You never complained like this before. That sentence clarified something I had not understood. My silence had become his permission. Every time I swallowed disappointment to preserve peace, he recorded it as consent. I pointed to the first date. This payment happened 2 weeks before I changed my schedule. He looked away. You already knew, I said. Paige called me crying. I had to make a quick decision. And then you made the same quick decision 13 more times. His phone rang on the counter. Paige's name appeared on the screen. Owen reached for it, but I picked it up first and answered on speaker. Hi, Paige. There was a pause. Camille? Yes, Owen and I are discuss. Ing the rent payments. Owen held out his hand. I moved the phone away. Paige spoke carefully. I thought you knew. Why? Owen told me you wanted to stay home anyway. He said paying my rent didn't take anything away from you. I looked at my husband. He stared at the table. How long was this supposed to continue? I asked. Until my lease ends. When is that? Next April. 10 more months. I took a pen and wrote the words across the top of the transfer list. 10 more months. If nothing changed, Owen's promise would total $32,400. Paige began explaining that Nora loved her school and had already endured too much change. I listened until she said, I didn't know this was causing a problem between you. It did not cause the problem, I said. The lie caused the problem. Owen ended the call. You embarrassed her, he said. She knew the money came from us. She believed you agreed. Because you lied to her too. He rubbed both hands over his face. What do you want me to do? Put my niece on the street? I want complete records. I want to know whether there are any other payments I do not know about. And I am not declining Milo's daycare place today. We cannot afford both. Then something else has to change. I packed the statements into my work bag and drove to Lakeside with Milo. Marisol let him color in her office while I met with Denise Cho, the benefits coordinator. I told Denise I needed exact figures, not reassurance. She pulled up the full-time offer and turned her monitor toward me. We calculated federal and state withholding, health insurance premiums, retirement contributions, and daycare tuition. Moving Milo and me to Lakeside's health plan reduced the amount Owen was paying through his employer. My retirement match returned. My paid leave began accruing again. After every deduction, our household had several $100s more each month than it had under the current arrangement. That did not include the value of the employer retirement match or future raises. Denise printed the projection and underlined the final figure. Childcare is a household expense, Camille, she said. It is not a fee deducted from the value of your career. I sat with that sentence. Marisol joined us after her morning meeting. The full-time job is yours if you want it, she said. The lead position is not. You will have to interview. That is fair. When can you start? 2 weeks, she smiled. Then welcome back. Before leaving, I called Bright Steps. The deposit was equal to 1 month of tuition. I paid it from an individual account I had maintained since before our marriage. The account held my weekend shift differential. Every Saturday, Lakeside paid an additional amount for difficult coverage. Years earlier, I had arranged for that differential to enter my old account while the base pay went into checking. I had never hidden the account from Owen, but he rarely remembered it existed. The balance was enough for the deposit and the first 2 months of childcare. I did not need to empty our joint account or take money needed for the mortgage. I only needed to stop waiting for Owen's permission. Next, I met with a nonprofit financial counselor named Teresa Vaughn. She reviewed the statements, our incomes, debts, and fixed expenses. Do not solve financial secrecy with more secrecy, she advised. Redirect your future income if you need protection, but propose a system both people can see. Together, we created a household budget. It listed the mortgage, utilities, groceries, insurance, childcare, retirement savings, Milo's medical costs, transportation, and emergency savings. Contributions were proportional to our incomes. Each of us would retain an equal personal allowance after obligations were paid. If Owen wanted to use his allowance to help Paige, he could. But he could no longer make her rent a household priority while treating childcare as my private ambition. On Friday morning, Owen entered the kitchen carrying coffee. "The daycare deadline is today," he said. "Please do not make me remind you again." I closed Milo's lunch container and placed it in the refrigerator. "You won't have to. I paid the deposit yesterday." He stared at me. "You did what?" "Milo starts in 2 weeks. I accepted the full-time position at Lakeside." Without discussing it with me, I almost laughed, but nothing felt funny. "I discussed it with you. You refused to look at the numbers. Cancel it." "No." I placed the new budget on the table. Beside it, I placed the 14 payment ledger. "Beginning with my first full-time paycheck, my income will go into my individual account. We will each transfer our agreed share into the joint account for household expenses." Owen looked from one page to the other. "You are separating our finances. I am making them visible. This is punishment. This is what transparency looks like after 14 months of secret payments." I showed him the employer projection. With childcare, retirement, and health coverage included, the household is better off. Your claim was never accurate. He scanned the page. "You had no right to make this decision alone. You made $32,400 in promised decisions alone. $18,900 has already left our account. That money helped a child. So will this. Paige cannot cover her apartment if I stop paying. Then she needs a plan. She can move to a smaller unit, take more hours, find a roommate, enforce child support, or stay with your parents temporarily. You are punishing an innocent child because you are jealous that I helped my sister." I looked at him across the table where I had once shown him the first childcare calculation. "You used our child to keep me home while paying for hers to stay exactly where she was." Owen's face changed, not because he agreed, but because he understood I was no longer asking. He called his parents before lunch. By that evening, Linda had left 3 messages. The first asked me to call. The second said everyone needed to calm down. The third accused me of placing Nora's education at risk. On Saturday, Owen's father, Gary, invited us to their house for a family solution. I did not want to go, but Teresa had told me that lies grow best when one person controls how every audience hears the story. So I made copies. Paige sat at the dining table with her arms folded. Linda had a legal pad. Gary looked uncomfortable. Owen took the chair beside his sister rather than the one beside me. Linda began, "Nora cannot lose her home and school because you suddenly miss wearing scrubs." I placed the first page in front of her. "This is not about missing an outfit. This is my employment offer, insurance contribution, and retirement match." "Nobody said you can't work," she replied. Owen did, every time he said childcare was unaffordable while he paid Paige almost the same amount. I passed out the transfer list. Gary adjusted his glasses. 14 months, Paige looked at Owen. "You said they knew." "I said Camille wanted to stay home," Owen answered. "That is not the same thing." "Neither statement was true," I said. Linda tapped the paper. "Paige was abandoned. Families help each other." "I agree. Families discuss $18,000 decisions. They do not fund them by lying to another family member." I asked Paige what her rent was. She confirmed it was $1,825. Owen's payment covered most of it. "What happens when the lease ends?" I asked. "I renew if I can." "Have you looked at smaller apartments in the same school district? They don't have the same space." "Have you asked the studio for more hours? The evening classes interfere with Nora's routine." "A roommate?" Her expression hardened. "I am not bringing a stranger into my daughter's home. Formal enforcement for child support? Derek says he will catch up." I waited. Nobody spoke. Paige finally said, "I didn't take a roommate because Nora needs her own space." Owen said the rent was handled. That sentence removed the word emergency from the room. Paige was not facing the street. She was protecting preferences because Owen had promised someone else would absorb the cost. Linda said, "Nora has already been through enough." "Milo needed care," I replied. "I needed my career. None of you called those needs stability." Gary read the benefits page carefully, then he looked at Owen. "Did you know these numbers? Camille's making them look better than they are. They were prepared by my employer's benefits coordinator." Gary turned to the bank statements. "And did you tell her about these?" Owen said nothing. The exposure was quieter than I had imagined. No one shouted. No glass broke. 4 adults simply sat around a table while the documents made it impossible to maintain the version of me Owen had created. Linda could still disapprove. Paige could still resent me, but neither could honestly claim I had chosen not to work or that childcare was beyond our means. Before we left, Gary told Paige he and Linda could help her compare apartments. They would not assume her full rent, but she could stay with them briefly if necessary. The disaster everyone had used to justify secrecy immediately became a list of ordinary options. Milo started bright steps 2 Mondays later. The first morning, he wrapped both arms around my leg and cried so hard that I nearly carried him back to the car. His teacher, Ms. Aisha, knelt beside us and held out a wooden train. "You can call in 20 minutes, she said. "If he is still this upset, we will tell you honestly." I cried in the parking lot. Then I drove to Lakeside. 20 minutes later, Ms. Aisha sent a photo of Milo sitting beside another child, pushing the train across a rug. Guilt remained, but it no longer felt like proof that I had made the wrong decision. Returning to full-time work was not a triumphant montage. My feet hurt. The software had changed. I was slower than I remembered, and I hated asking younger colleagues where certain menus had moved. But the knowledge returned. So did the part of me that could enter a darkened room, study a grainy image, and trust her training. At home, the new schedule exposed how much labor Owen had never noticed. We divided pickups, sick days, cooking, laundry, and bedtime on a shared calendar. He agreed to the schedule, but agreement on paper did not become habit immediately. 3 weeks after Milo started, I finished a difficult afternoon scan and checked my phone. Bright Steps had called twice. I stepped into the hall and called back. "Milo is fine," Hannah said, "but Owen has not arrived. He is listed for pickup today." My old instinct told me to grab my bag and fix it. Instead, I asked, "Have you called him?" "Yes, he said he thought you were coming." "The schedule lists him. Please keep calling him. If there is an emergency, call me again." Owen arrived 27 minutes late. By then, Milo was the last child in the room, holding his coat beside Hannah's desk. Hannah did not soften the mistake for him. "Camille was not listed for pickup today. You were." We called the parent whose name was on the schedule. That evening, Owen accused me of proving a point through Milo. "No," I said. "I made you complete the responsibility you agreed to. You were closer. I was with a patient. I was with a client." "Exactly. Both jobs mattered, and one of us was assigned pickup." He looked furious, but beneath the anger, I saw something else. The old arrangement had allowed him to treat his work interruptions as impossible and mine as automatic. The calendar removed that privilege 1 square at a time. Our marriage became colder. Owen paid his household contribution, but he reviewed every category as if I had imposed a fine. He slept facing away from me. When Paige found an apartment listing she disliked, he blamed me for forcing her backward. Then one night he said, "You changed our marriage without my approval." I was folding Milo's pajamas. I set them down. "You changed our marriage 14 months before I knew it," I said. "You decided my career, my retirement, and my time were available to fund your promise. You only call the change unacceptable now because it limits you." He packed a bag and stayed with his parents. The separation lasted 6 weeks. I did not use those weeks to threaten him or rehearse revenge. I used them to see what my life felt like when I was not constantly defending basic arithmetic. Owen still had scheduled time with Milo. For the first time, he handled entire weekday routines without assuming I would prepare everything. He packed daycare lunches, found missing socks, arranged a pediatric appointment, and stayed home when Milo woke with a fever. The first sick day, he texted me, "He won't eat anything." "What do I do?" I replied, "Offer fluids. His pediatrician's number is in the shared contacts." I did not drive over. By evening, Owen had spoken to the nurse, bought electrolyte pops, and learned that comforting a sick toddler meant doing the same small things for hours without anyone applauding. We began counseling with Dr. Lena Morris. During the first session, Owen described himself as a dependable older brother who had made a mistake because he was trying to protect his niece. Dr. Morris asked, "Why did protecting Nora require deceiving Camille?" "Because she would have said no." "Would she?" Owen glanced at me. "She would have wanted a limit." "That is not the same as saying no." In the third session, I brought the old yellow legal pad. The daycare amount was still circled in Owen's red ink. Dr. Morris asked him why he had treated the full tuition as a cost of my employment rather than a shared expense. He gave several answers. My schedule was more flexible. Milo was young. My paycheck was smaller. I was better at routines. Each answer collapsed under one more question. Finally, he stopped talking. "If I admitted we could afford daycare," he said, "I would have had to admit I liked the life her sacrifice gave me." The room went still. He looked at me. I liked being the person Paige called when she needed rescuing, and I liked coming home to everything handled. I told myself Camille wanted it because then I didn't have to feel guilty. That was the first honest answer he gave me. It did not repair the damage, but it identified it. Owen had not chosen Paige only because he loved his niece. Supporting Paige made him feel generous. Keeping me home made his own life easier. The lie allowed him to enjoy both roles while calling my loss a choice. Paige eventually rented a smaller 2-bedroom apartment 12 minutes from her old one. Nora remained in the same school. Paige added 2 early morning classes at the studio and filed for formal child support enforcement. Gary helped with her moving. Truck, Linda watched Nora during the move. Nobody became homeless. Nora did not lose her school. The feared catastrophe never happened because it had never been the only possible outcome. At Lakeside, I applied for the lead sonographer role. I interviewed against 3 other candidates. Marisol asked hard questions about conflict management and changes in imaging protocols. I did not receive special treatment for returning. 3 months later, she called me into her office and handed me the same blue binder I had taken home years earlier. "You earned the position," she said, "not because you came back, because of what you did after you came back." I carried the binder to my car and sat behind the wheel for several minutes. I thought I would feel victorious. Mostly, I felt grief for the version of me who had believed ambition and motherhood were opposing loyalties. Then I called Milo's daycare. It was music day, and his class had been practicing a song about animals. I asked whether parents could still attend. "Of course," Hannah said, 4 o'clock. When I arrived, Owen was already there. He had left work early on his assigned pickup day. He had saved me a chair beside him. Milo stood with 8 toddlers wearing a paper lion mask crooked over one eye. He saw us and waved so enthusiastically that his teacher had to guide him back into line. Owen smiled, then looked at me. "Congratulations on the lead position." "Thank you." He did not say that the promotion proved everything had worked out. He had learned that later success did not erase what his deception had cost. After 6 weeks apart, I allowed him to return home gradually. There was no dramatic reunion. He brought 1 suitcase back, continued counseling, and slept in the guest room at first. My conditions were simple to state and difficult to fake. We would have full access to every account. Neither of us would spend or transfer more than an agreed amount without discussion. Childcare and household work would remain shared responsibilities. We would review the budget together every month. If financial secrecy happened again, the marriage would end. Owen agreed in writing, because I no longer accepted promises that existed only in the air. One evening, several months after the separation, we sat at the kitchen table with the monthly budget between us. Milo colored beside me, pressing a green crayon so hard it snapped. Owen replaced it from the box, then signed the budget page beside my name. "I owe you an apology without an explanation attached," he said. I waited. "I made your sacrifice look voluntary because that made me feel less guilty about benefiting from it. I lied about the money. I lied to Paige. I lied to my parents. And I let everyone praise me for supporting a choice I had forced through deception." There was no mention of Paige's divorce, no claim that his intentions had been good, no request that I forgive him immediately. "I hear you," I said. Trust did not return because of that sentence. It returned, slowly, through ordinary evidence. Owen completed pickup on his days. He stayed home when Milo was sick. He cooked every Tuesday and Thursday without asking me to plan the meals. He reviewed the accounts with me even when the conversation was uncomfortable. Some nights, I still opened the banking app after he went to bed. 14 months of deception had trained my body to look for danger. Owen knew that my checking was a consequence, not an insult. We were rebuilding, but I stopped describing rebuilding as a promise that everything would become what it had been. I did not want the old marriage back. I wanted one in which my time was visible, my work was respected, and generosity toward relatives could not be purchased with my future. Milo eventually stopped crying at daycare drop-off. He made a best friend named Theo and began asking every Wednesday whether it was music day. His language expanded. He learned to put on his own coat, though he usually zipped it crooked. I still felt guilt sometimes. I learned that guilt was not always a warning. Sometimes it was only the echo of a rule someone else had taught me, that a good mother should disappear into what everyone needed from her. I did not disappear. I remained Milo's mother when I entered Lakeside each morning. I remained a sonographer when I knelt beside his bed at night. Those identities did not compete unless someone benefited from making me choose. The money mattered. $18,900 was not small. The missed retirement contributions mattered. The delayed promotion mattered. But the deepest betrayal was that Owen had measured two women's futures and decided mine was cheaper to postpone. Paige's apartment had a monthly price printed on a lease. My stalled career, unpaid labor, and lost independence did not arrive as a bill, so he treated them as free. They were never free. The family could always afford childcare. Owen had simply decided at losing my future cost him less. Before you go, tell me this. Could you rebuild trust after 14 months of financial deception, or would the first hidden payment have ended the marriage for you? And tell me your name and the city you're watching from. I want to know where this story found you.